Eco in Beyond All Reason is the most important thing a player can learn. And hopefully you come here because you want to learn how to improve. This video is mostly going to be showing you areas that you can work on improving as a new player and areas that we should be helping other new players learn. Now, enough of an introduction, let's get into the video. The first issue we see oftentimes with new players is they won't get their beginning mechs quite as fast as they should. That's not the only problem, but sometimes they won't get them until the mid to late game, which is really bad. Every single mechs on most maps is usually worth anywhere between 1.5 metal per second to up to 3 to 5 metal per second on certain mechs. And if you've spent any amount of time in Beyond All Reason, you understand how important metal really is, especially early game. Speaking of metal, it's also very important to gather all the minerals and rocks that you find on the map as well. Another mistake that I often see is players leaving their T1 solar panels up for far too long in a game. A T1 solar panel costs 155 metal to build and only produces 20 energy per second. Now compare that to a windmill, which costs anywhere from 45 metal to 37 metal and can produce anywhere from 6 energy to 16 energy on certain maps. 9 times out of 10, your wind is going to be your most efficient for early game energy production. It is, however, important if you are building wind that you have some kind of energy storage, because the wind speed is generally quite irregular, so it's good to have backup stored up. Our third thing we see often is T2 transition. This is something that's pretty complicated, and a lot of people have a lot of different opinions on it. But there's one thing for sure, and that is new players definitely struggle with when to transition into T2. Some people, they transition right off the bat, and others don't really have the backup they need before they start transitioning. This can lead to your front line collapsing and your eco position having to take up all the slack that you left for them. Now, I get it, this is a hard thing to do, and ultimately you just have to keep practicing, and eventually you'll come into a rhythm of when is a good time to transition. I often recommend sucking up your T1 factory to pour all that metal into your transition, that way you have a little bit more disposable income. Regardless of how you choose to handle this, T2 is extremely powerful, so getting it up in the right timing will definitely benefit your games. Another thing that new players seem to struggle with quite frequently is something as simple as build power. Part of this is maybe they are new to the RTS genre, which that's completely understandable. The other part of this is maybe they're familiar with RTS, but this game has a very different way of dealing with build power. Most RTSs, the build power is automatic based on the factories you have, whereas this game allows you to add build power to certain buildings. This makes it so there can be a little bit more to manage. As players who have had some experience with this game, we really should help encourage new players to learn and grow in these areas, and just help them to have some fun and see the joy of this game, so that they can like it the same way that we do. The fifth thing we end up seeing a lot of newer players struggle with is the Endgame Economy. The Endgame Economy can be pretty tricky. First, you have to figure out when you're going to get there and where you're going to spare the metal to be able to reach it. These fusion reactors and advanced fusion are very expensive, so there's a little bit of balancing you have to do to be able to get to that point. However, done correctly, the advanced economy is the most powerful tool in a player's belt. With it, you can devastate the front line, take out the back line, and eventually win the game. Oftentimes, a game will rely entirely upon who is doing the eco position, so this is something that every player should be somewhat familiar with, just in case the role lands on you. Thank you guys for sticking to the end, and if you enjoyed the video, I really would appreciate it if you subscribe. It helps out the channel a ton, and also share the video with some friends who want to get into Beyond All Reason and see what they think of the game. As always, I will see you guys on the battlefield.